The throne room stretched endlessly before them, its obsidian walls gleaming under the cold light of 1,000 dying stars. Emperor Zixithara the Destroyer sat upon the crimson throne, his 6 arms draped casually over its armrests while his compound eyes surveyed the assembly of ambassadors cowering before him. His voice, when it came, was like grinding metal. "So this Earth refuses our terms?" The Galactic Council's chief diplomat, a trembling 4-legged creature from Kepler 442b, shuffled forward. "Your Imperial Majesty, the humans claim they need more time to consider." Silence. The Emperor's roar shook the very foundations of the palace. Several ambassadors fell to their knees in terror. Time? They dare ask for time from Zixithara the Destroyer? I who have conquered 10,000 worlds? The Emperor rose from his throne, his massive form casting shadows that seemed to writhe with malevolent life. At nearly 12 feet tall, covered in chitinous armor that had been hardened by the deaths of entire civilizations, he was a sight that had broken the will of species across the galaxy. "Tell me, Ambassador Kixilor," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than his roar. "What makes these humans think they can defy me?" Ambassador Kixilor's tentacles quivered as he consulted his datapad. "Your Majesty, according to our intelligence reports, they are remarkably unremarkable. Average height, no natural weapons, soft skin, limited lifespans. They've barely achieved faster-than-light travel." The Emperor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Soft skin, you say? How disappointing." He gestured to the massive holographic display that materialized above the assembly. Earth appeared, rotating slowly, its blue oceans and green continents looking almost pathetically beautiful against the black of space. "Behold, the so-called cradle of humanity," the Emperor sneered. "A single planet, harboring perhaps 8 billion of these creatures. I have antimatter bombs that could crack their world like an egg." He began to pace, his heavy footsteps echoing through the chamber. "But first, let us show these humans what true power looks like. Summon my personal guard. It is time they understood the futility of resistance." At his command, the great doors of the throne room burst open. In marched the Emperor's most elite warriors, the Crimson Guard. These were the finest soldiers in the known galaxy, hand-picked from among the most dangerous species, trained from birth to kill without question, enhanced with cybernetic implants that made them nearly unstoppable. But as they filed into the throne room, Emperor Zixithara felt a strange chill run down his spine. There was something familiar about their movements, the way they held themselves, the precision of their steps. He shook off the feeling. After all, he had conquered so many worlds, faced so many species. Sometimes they all began to blur together. "My Lord Emperor," came a voice from behind the helmet of the guard captain. The voice was steady, professional, with just a hint of an accent the Emperor couldn't quite place. "You summoned us?" "Yes, Captain Reeves. I want you to prepare for the subjugation of Earth. These humans must be shown the price of defying me." There was a pause, a very slight pause that, under any other circumstances, might have been meaningless. But Emperor Zixithara had not conquered 10,000 worlds by ignoring subtle signs. "Of course, Your Majesty," Captain Reeves replied. "We live to serve." As the guards took their positions around the throne room, the Emperor noticed something else that nagged at him. Their armor, while bearing the insignia of his empire, seemed to fit them differently than the armor of other species. More naturally, but he dismissed the thought. After all, the Crimson Guard had served him faithfully for decades. They had crushed rebellions, eliminated threats, and expanded his empire to the very edges of the known galaxy. Whatever minor peculiarities they possessed were irrelevant. "Now then," the Emperor announced to the assembly, "let us discuss the terms of Earth's surrender, because surrender they will once they see what awaits those who oppose me." What he didn't notice was the way Captain Reeves's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on his weapon, or how several of the other guards exchanged the briefest of glances. Signs that, had he recognized them, might have changed the course of what was about to unfold. The Emperor was about to learn that sometimes the greatest threats come not from enemies you can see, but from allies you think you understand. 3 days after the Emperor's declaration, Captain Marcus Reeves stood in the private armory deep within the palace's lower levels. He removed his helmet, revealing a face that would have been instantly recognizable to any human from Earth. Strong jawline weathered by years of combat, eyes the color of storm clouds and a scar running from his left temple to his cheek. Around him, 20 other members of the Crimson Guard were also removing their helmets, revealing faces that shared one unmistakable trait. They were all human. "Well," said Sergeant Elena Vasquez, her Mexican accent thick with bitter irony, "that could have gone better." Lieutenant David Kim, a third-generation Korean-American whose grandparents had fled Earth during the first colonial wave, let out a hollow laugh. "Could have gone better? Elena, our Emperor just declared war on our home planet." Captain Reeves set his helmet down carefully on the weapon rack. His hands were steady, but his mind was racing. 23 years. 23 years he had served in the Crimson Guard, rising through the ranks, earning the trust of an alien emperor who saw humans as nothing more than soft, weak creatures ripe for conquest. "How did we let it get this far?" whispered Private Jennifer Walsh, the youngest member of their unit. At 19, she had never even seen Earth except in photographs. "My parents, my little brother, they're all down there." Corporal Hassan al-Rashid, whose family had originally fled the Syrian conflicts of the 2030s, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We didn't let anything happen, Jennifer. We've been loyal soldiers, we've followed orders, but this..." He gestured toward the ceiling, toward the throne room far above where Emperor Zixthera was no doubt planning the destruction of their homeworld. "This changes everything." Captain Reeves turned to face his team. These weren't just soldiers under his command. They were the last remnants of a colony ship that had been captured 40 years ago. They had been children then, taken and raised as weapons in service to the Empire. They had learned to fight, to kill, to serve without question. They had become the perfect soldiers, and now they were being ordered to destroy their own species. "Listen to me," Reeves said quietly. "What I'm about to say could be considered treason. If anyone wants to leave, leave now." No one moved. The Emperor thinks humans are weak because he's never faced a human who was fighting for something that mattered. He's seen us as soldiers, yes, but soldiers without a cause beyond his glory. He's about to learn the difference between a human who serves and a human who protects. Sergeant Vasquez stepped forward. "What are you proposing, Captain?" "I'm proposing we remind him why humans earned a place in his guard in the first place. We're not here because we're weak. We're here because we're dangerous." Lieutenant Kim nodded slowly. "The Emperor trusts us completely. We have access to the palace's most secure areas, its weapon systems, its communication networks. And we know his tactics," added Corporal al-Rashid. "We've helped him conquer dozens of worlds. We know exactly how he thinks." Private Walsh looked up at her captain with eyes that suddenly blazed with determination. "What do you need us to do?" Before Reeves could answer, the armory's door chimed. All 21 humans instantly snapped to attention, their helmets back on their heads in a fluid motion that spoke of years of training. The door slid open to reveal Subcommander Krextal, a 7-foot-tall insectoid creature that served as the Emperor's chief of security. His 4 eyes regarded them with cold suspicion. "Captain Reeves," he clicked in his species' distinctive language, "the Emperor requires your presence. Immediately." "Of course, Sub-Commander," Reeves replied in the same language, his voice carefully neutral. "My squad and I were just conducting equipment inspection." "See that you were." Krextal's mandibles clicked with what might have been amusement. "The Emperor is most eager to discuss the coming campaign against your species' homeworld." As they followed Krextal through the corridors of the palace, Reeves couldn't help but notice how their footsteps seemed to echo differently now. How the familiar weight of his armor felt alien against his skin. How every symbol of the Empire he had served so faithfully now felt like a chain around his neck. They were about to enter the throne room where Emperor Zixthera would outline his plans for Earth's destruction, and for the first time in 23 years of service, Captain Marcus Reeves was going to be planning not how to carry out his orders, but how to stop them. The question was, could 21 humans, no matter how skilled, stand against the might of a galactic empire? They were about to find out. Emperor Zixthara stood before a massive tactical display, his 6 arms manipulating holographic controls with practiced ease. The display showed Earth in excruciating detail. Every major city, every military installation, every population, center marked for systematic destruction. "Ah, Captain Reeves," the Emperor said without turning around as the Crimson Guard filed into the strategy chamber. "Come, observe the beauty of absolute conquest." Reeves stepped forward, his helmet's heads-up display recording every detail of the Emperor's battle plan. What he saw made his blood run cold. This wasn't just an invasion, it was genocide. Phase 1. The Emperor continued, gesturing to the holographic Earth. "We destroy their orbital defenses. Pathetic as they are, we cannot risk any interference. Phase 2. Systematic elimination of their major population centers. We start with what they call New York, London, Tokyo. Terror is a weapon, Captain, and these humans must learn to fear." The Emperor finally turned around, his compound eyes glittering with cruel anticipation. "But here's the beautiful part. Phase 3. We leave approximately 10% of their population alive, enough to serve as slaves, too few to ever threaten us again." Reeves felt his jaw clench behind his helmet. Around him, he could sense the tension radiating from his fellow humans, all of them struggling to maintain their composure. "A masterful strategy, Your Majesty," Reeves managed to say. "When do we begin?" "Tomorrow at the turning of Galactic Standard Time," the Emperor replied. "My fleet is already moving into position. But first, I have a special task for you and your unit." The Emperor touched another control, and the display zoomed in on a facility that Reeves recognized: the Global Defense Command Center in Geneva. Intelligence indicates this is their primary military coordination hub. I want you to lead a strike team to capture it intact. Their databases will contain valuable information about their defensive capabilities and population distribution. Consider it a warm-up exercise before the main event. Reeves nodded. "We won't fail you, Your Majesty." "I know you won't, Captain. You never have." The Emperor's mandibles clicked with what passed for affection among his species. "You and your unit have been my most reliable assets. It's almost poetic. Humans destroying humans. There's a lesson there about the futility of resistance." "Indeed, Your Majesty," Reeves replied, his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. As they left the strategy chamber, Sub-Commander Krextal fell into step beside Reeves. "The Emperor places great trust in you, Captain. See that it is not misplaced." "The Emperor's trust is sacred to me," Reeves replied, and in a way it was the truth. The Emperor did trust him, completely, blindly, foolishly. 2 hours later, the Crimson Guard was aboard their assault ship, the Crimson Vengeance, as it slipped through hyperspace toward Earth. To any observer, they appeared to be an elite strike force preparing for a routine mission. But in the ship's briefing room, with the door sealed and all surveillance systems mysteriously malfunctioning, Captain Reeves was addressing his team without their helmets. "Here's what's going to happen," he said quietly. "We're going to Geneva, just as ordered. We're going to the Global Defense Center. But instead of capturing it for the Emperor, we're going to give Earth's defenders every piece of intelligence we have about the Imperial fleet." Sergeant Vasquez leaned forward. "That's a start, but Marcus, you've seen the tactical display. The Imperial fleet has over 3,000 ships. Earth's entire navy might have 200 vessels, and most of those are exploration craft, not warships. Which is why we're not just going to warn them," Reeves replied. "We're going to help them fight." Lieutenant Kim shook his head. 21 soldiers against the Imperial fleet? "No," Reeves said, his eyes hardening. 21 soldiers who know every weakness in Imperial technology, every tactical doctrine, every security protocol. 21 soldiers with access to the Emperor's personal command codes and communication frequencies. The implications began to dawn on his team. Private Walsh was the first to speak. "You're talking about sabotage from the inside. I'm talking about survival. Reeves corrected. The Emperor thinks he knows humans because he's owned a few of us, but he's never faced humans who are fighting for their families, their homes, their very existence. He's about to learn that there's a difference between a human in chains and a human unleashed. Corporal al-Rashid smiled grimly. So we give Earth the intelligence they need to fight smart. Then we head back to the Imperial fleet and start breaking things from the inside. That's the plan, Reeves confirmed. But understand this, once we do this, there's no going back. We'll be branded as traitors. The Emperor will hunt us across the galaxy. Good, said Sergeant Vasquez. Let him come. I've been wanting to show him what this soft, weak human can really do. As the Crimson Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace, at the edge of Earth's solar system, Captain Marcus Reeves looked out at the blue marble that had been humanity's home for millennia. He had served an alien emperor faithfully for over 2 decades, helping to conquer world after world, believing that loyalty and duty were the highest virtues a soldier could possess. But now he remembered something he had forgotten during all those years of service. There are some things worth fighting for, and some orders that should never be obeyed. The Emperor was about to learn that the humans he had dismissed as weak and soft were the same species that had created the most effective soldiers in his own army. And those soldiers were coming home, not as conquerors but as protectors. The war for Earth was about to begin, and for the first time in the conflict, humans would be fighting on both sides, but only one side would be fighting for humanity. The Global Defense Command Center in Geneva was in chaos. Admiral Sarah Chen, Supreme Commander of Earth's Combined Defense Forces, stared at the tactical display showing the approaching Imperial fleet. 3,000 ships, including dreadnoughts, the size of cities, were bearing down on humanity's cradle world. "Ma'am," came a voice from behind her. "We're receiving a priority transmission on a secure channel. The source is unusual." Admiral Chen turned to see her communications officer, Lieutenant Torres, wearing an expression of complete bewilderment. "Unusual how?" "The signal is coming from an Imperial assault craft, but it's requesting permission to land and claiming to have vital intelligence for Earth's defense." Before Admiral Chen could respond, proximity alarms began screaming throughout the command center. On the main display, a sleek black ship had appeared in Earth's atmosphere, moving at impossible speed toward their location. "Should we shoot it down, ma'am?" asked her weapons officer. Admiral Chen hesitated. Something about this felt different. "Let it through, but track it with every system we have if it makes one hostile move." "Understood, ma'am." 20 minutes later, Admiral Chen stood face to face with Captain Marcus Reeves in the command center's secure briefing room. He had removed his helmet, revealing a human face that carried the weathered look of a veteran soldier. "You're claiming to be Imperial Guard?" Admiral Chen asked, her voice skeptical. "Not claiming, Admiral. I am Imperial Guard. Or rather, I was." Reeves touched a control on his armor, and a holographic display materialized between them. "This is the complete tactical deployment of Emperor Zixathara's invasion fleet. Ship positions, weapon capabilities, shield frequencies, command protocols, and—" He paused, his expression grim. "The Emperor's plan for Earth's population." "Admiral," Chen studied the data, her face growing pale. "This shows systematic extermination of 90% of humanity." "The Emperor doesn't believe in half measures," Reeves replied. "But Admiral, I didn't come here just to deliver intelligence. I came here to help you win. One man against 3,000 ships?" Reeves smiled grimly. "Not one man, 21. And we're not just any soldiers. We're the Emperor's personal guard. We know his tactics, his weaknesses, and most importantly, we have access to his flagship." Over the next 6 hours, Admiral Chen listened as Captain Reeves outlined the most audacious plan in military history. It relied on deception, timing, and the element of surprise, and the fact that Emperor Zixathara had never conceived that his most trusted soldiers might turn against him. Meanwhile, aboard the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion, Emperor Zixathara paced his command deck in growing agitation. The Crimson Guard was 17 hours overdue for their report from Earth. "Subcommander Krextal," he growled, "have you established contact with Captain Reeves?" "No, Your Majesty. The Crimson Vengeance appears to be maintaining communications." Silence. The Emperor's mandibles clicked with irritation. That's not like them. The guard has never missed a scheduled report. Perhaps they encountered unexpected resistance, Your Majesty. Emperor Zixthara's laugh was like grinding stone. From humans? Impossible. More likely their communications array was damaged during the infiltration. No matter. We begin the assault in 6 hours regardless. What the Emperor didn't know was that the Crimson Vengeance was already docking in the flagship's hangar bay, having used Imperial authorization codes to bypass all security checkpoints. As far as the ship's systems were concerned, Captain Reeves and his team were returning from a successful mission. Reeves led his squad through the familiar corridors of the flagship, their movements drawing no attention from the Imperial crew. They had walked these halls for years. They belonged here, but hidden in their equipment packs were devices that would change the course of the war. Electromagnetic pulse generators designed by Earth's finest scientists, targeted viral programs that could cripple Imperial computer systems, and small but devastating charges designed to disable the flagship's primary weapon systems. Phase 1 complete. Reeves whispered into his comm as his team split up to take their assigned positions throughout the ship. We're in position. Back on Earth, Admiral Chen watched as the Imperial fleet moved into attack formation. The sight was terrifying. Ships that dwarfed Earth's largest vessels, weapons that could crack continents, shields that could repel, anything in humanity's arsenal. But she also had something the Emperor didn't expect: the complete loyalty of the humans he had trained to be perfect soldiers. All Earth forces, Admiral Chen broadcast on the command frequency. This is Admiral Chen, execute Operation Homecoming. At that moment, 3 things happened simultaneously. On Earth, every defense platform, every orbital station, and every ship in the human fleet opened fire on predetermined coordinates that Captain Reeves had provided. Not at the Imperial ship's strongest points, but at the gaps in their formation, the blind spots in their sensor arrays, the weak points in their shields. In space, the Imperial fleet's formation began to collapse as their communication systems were overwhelmed by viral programs that the Crimson Guard had introduced into their network. Ships lost coordination, targeting systems failed, and command protocols dissolved into chaos. And aboard the flagship, 21 human soldiers who had served the Empire faithfully for decades began systematically dismantling it from within. Emperor Zixthara felt the deck shudder beneath his feet as explosions rocked his mighty vessel. "What's happening?" he roared. "Your Majesty," came Subcommander Krextal's panicked voice. "We're under attack. The humans, they're not as defenseless as we thought." "Impossible," the Emperor snarled. "I've seen their capabilities. They're nothing." That's when Captain Marcus Reeves walked onto the command deck, his helmet removed, his weapon trained on the Emperor who had been his master for 23 years. "You're right about one thing, Your Majesty," Reeves said calmly. "You have seen our capabilities. Every day for over 2 decades. The question is, did you ever wonder what would happen if we used those capabilities against you?" Emperor Zixthara stared at the human he had trusted above all others, his compound eyes wide with disbelief. But you're my guards. You serve me." "We serve the Empire," Reeves corrected. "But you just declared war on our home. That changes things." Around the command deck, the other members of the Crimson Guard emerged from strategic positions, their weapons trained on the Imperial officers who had commanded them for years. "Humans," Reeves continued, his voice carrying clearly across the bridge, "are not weak because we feel emotion, Your Majesty. We're dangerous because of it. You taught us to be perfect soldiers. You just never considered what would happen when perfect soldiers had something worth fighting for." The Emperor looked around at the faces of the humans who had served him faithfully, seeing them clearly for the first time. There was no hatred in their eyes, no cruelty, just cold, professional determination. And in that moment, Emperor Zixthara the Destroyer, conqueror of 10,000 worlds, understood that he had made the greatest tactical error of his long career. He had underestimated the species that had created the very soldiers who had made his conquest possible. "Surrender your fleet," Captain Reeves said quietly, "and we'll discuss terms. Continue this attack, and you'll discover why humans became Your finest warriors in the first place, the choice was his. But as explosions continued to rock the flagship and reports flooded in of Imperial ships being systematically disabled by an enemy that fought with impossible precision and knowledge, Emperor Zixthara began to suspect that the choice had actually been made 23 years ago when he had decided to raise human children as his weapons. He had created the instruments of his own defeat, and they were coming home. Epilogue: The New Alliance. 6 months after what historians would call the Battle of Seoul, Captain Marcus Reeves stood on the observation deck of the space station New Geneva, watching as construction crews worked to integrate Imperial and human technologies. The war had ended not with Earth's conquest, but with an unprecedented alliance. Emperor Zixthara had surrendered his fleet after witnessing the coordinated assault that had disabled 60% of his ships in the first hour of combat. But more than that, he had finally understood what his human guards had tried to tell him through their years of loyal service. Humanity's strength lay not in their individual capabilities, but in their ability to fight for something greater than themselves. "Sir?" came a familiar voice behind him. Reeves turned to see Private Jennifer Walsh, though she wore the insignia of a lieutenant now. She had been promoted after her role in coordinating the defense of Earth's orbital platforms. "How's the integration progressing, Lieutenant?" Reeves asked. "Better than expected, sir. The former Imperial crews are adapting well to the joint command structure. Turns out a lot of them were tired of conquest for its own sake. They're actually excited about the exploration missions we're planning." Reeves nodded. It had been a surprise to many that the surrender of the Imperial fleet had led not to imprisonment, but to partnership. Admiral Chen had proposed something unprecedented. Instead of destroying the Imperial war machine, humanity would transform it into an alliance for exploration and peaceful contact with other species. "And the Emperor?" Reeves asked. "Still in his quarters, sir. Still trying to write his memoirs. I think he's struggling with the chapter about how he lost a galactic empire to his own bodyguards." Reeves allowed himself a small smile. Zixthara had been given a choice: exile to a distant world, or collaboration with the new Earth Imperial Alliance as an advisor on interspecies relations. To everyone's surprise, he had chosen to stay. Perhaps, after millennia of conquest, he was curious about what it would feel like to build something instead of destroying it. "Captain," came another voice, and Reeves turned to see Admiral Chen approaching. "Admiral," he said, snapping to attention. "At ease, Marcus. Walk with me." They strolled along the observation deck, looking out at the bustling activity of the station. Ships from dozens of worlds were docked here now, their crews working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old Imperial system. "I've been thinking about your report," Admiral Chen said finally, "about the years you spent in Imperial service." Reeves tensed slightly. The psychological evaluations had been extensive, trying to understand how humans could serve an alien empire while still maintaining their essential humanity. "I know what you're going to ask, Admiral. How we could serve him for so long. How we could participate in the conquest of other worlds. Actually, I was going to thank you." Reeves stopped walking and stared at her. "You and your team spent 23 years learning everything there was to know about Imperial tactics, technology, and psychology. You became perfect soldiers in their service. And when Earth needed you, all of that knowledge, all of that training was turned to humanity's defense." She paused. "Without you, we would have been conquered in hours instead of mounting an effective defense. We still helped conquer innocent worlds, Admiral." "Yes, you did. And now you're helping us contact those same worlds, offering them membership in an alliance based on cooperation instead of subjugation. The Kepler 442b colony we liberated last month. They specifically requested that you lead the diplomatic mission because they trusted the humans who had served in the Imperial Guard." Reeves looked out at the stars, thinking of all the worlds he had helped conquer and all the worlds they were now helping to free. "Do you think we're doing the right thing, Admiral? Building this alliance instead of just defending Earth?" Admiral Chen followed his gaze to the stars. "I think, Captain, that you spent 23 years showing an alien emperor what humans could accomplish as soldiers. Now we're going to show the galaxy what humans can accomplish as explorers, diplomats, and friends." She paused, then added with a slight smile, "Besides, we learned something important from this whole experience." "What's that?" "Never underestimate a species that's willing to fight for its family." As if summoned by their conversation, the communication system crackled to life with a familiar voice. "Captain Reeves, to the bridge, please. We're receiving a response from the Tau Ceti colony. They're accepting our offer of alliance." Reeves and Admiral Chen exchanged a look. Another world choosing cooperation over conquest, diplomacy over subjugation. "Shall we?" Admiral Chen asked. As they walked toward the command center, Reeves reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. He had been a soldier in service to an empire, then a traitor who helped save his homeworld, and now he was something entirely new. A human helping to build a galactic community, based on the radical idea that different species could work together instead of simply trying to conquer each other. Behind them, through the observation deck's viewport, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the black of space. It looked peaceful from this distance, but Reeves knew that down there, in the cities and towns and homes of 8 billion humans, people were looking up at the stars with new eyes. For the first time in human history, they were not alone in the universe. And for the first time in galactic history, first contact had led not to conquest or submission, but to partnership. It had taken an alien emperor's declaration that humans were weak to prove just how strong they could be when they had something worth fighting for. And now they had something even more powerful than the will to fight. They had the will to build. The stars, once the domain of conquerors and empires, belonged to explorers and allies now, and humanity, the supposedly weak species, from a single blue world was leading the way. The end.